All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I am Stephanie Brown. I'm your back-end moderator. I will be making sure that everything runs smoothly, keeping track of the time. So excited to welcome you here. And I am the podcast host for the Sisters Overcoming and Rising podcast, also known as SOAR. And I'm going to turn it over to our panelists for them to introduce themselves and their topic.
Hello, my name is Jeff Kelly. I'm here representing my podcast, Introverted Intuition. The topic and the title of this panel is Freedom from the Darkness. That's completely synonymous with my podcast's purpose. When I sought out to start this journey 2 years ago, the only intention I had was to provide a platform that also provides the same feeling that I got from podcasts. I always felt free from the darkness that depression and anxiety conjure when I listen to a podcast. So I wanted to impart that same feeling on all who listen and watch my podcast online. So yeah, welcome.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, I'm Alexis. Go ahead. Sorry.
I wasn't sure who was going to pick up.
Go ahead, Alexis.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Alexis DeAngicoli. My podcast is Expressive Espresso. It's basically about life hacks, entrepreneurship, and side hustlers. I started my podcast in 2016 after the birth of my son. I just wanted to have a place, an outlet that didn't discuss gossip. And there's nothing wrong with gossip, but I just wanted to help others like myself who had side hustles and things like that. So, and I'm very glad to be on this platform, and I'm looking forward to it.
Blake or Alexis, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, everybody. My name is Blake. I'm the host of Diary of a Mad Black Man. It's a diary and a podcast all in one. I started my podcast because I wanted a safe space to express myself, to talk about my mental health challenges I've been through, and as well as to continue in the healing process. And it's going pretty great.
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Walker, and I'm the creator of When Hers United, the podcast. When Hers United is your one-stop shop for business, mindset, personal development, and self-care conversations with winning women of color entrepreneurs. And it's a place for aspiring and current entrepreneurs to learn and grow. And I was actually surprised at how much mindset is a part of being a successful entrepreneur. So it allowed me to be freed from a lot of darkness, which made sense for me to join this panel.
Yeah. And I have a list of questions that I'm going to present to my fellow panelists, but for the ones at home, I would like you to formulate your own answers to these questions, as well as maybe any further answers or explanations you may need from our answers from these questions. And my very first one, I'm going to start with maybe Alexis, you can answer first, moving into Blake, then Nicole, is how has your podcast freed you from the darkness?
So my podcast has freed me from the darkness. I was in corporate America, and I still am. I have plenty of side hustles. I title myself as a serial side hustler, and it's freed me from there because I have met a lot of different people, and I mean people that I couldn't even imagine, as well as being even on this panel. It's freed me from that because it's freed me from my nervousness as far as speaking, being an introvert, and it's just helped me articulate my ideas and make my projects actually become real. So that's how it has freed me.
Blake?
So my podcast, Diary of a Mad Black Man, started at a time in my life when I was very depressed. I had recently just got out of the hospital, and I needed to do something to occupy my mind to kind of, again, free myself from darkness. And what it did was it created a safe space for me to share and talk about the things that I was going through. But what it also did was, in the process of recording the podcast and editing the podcast, I was able to reflect and listen to the things that I was saying to myself. So similar to being in a therapy session, I would hear the things that I was saying back again. and it helped me to find more clarity. It helped me to process different things that I had been through, and it grew to be a deep passion of mine. And I love that it's allowed me to connect with amazing people to eventually end up here on this panel. And I'm pretty sure that now, over 12,000 downloads and plays later, it's going to continue to be an asset in my life.
Last but not least, Nicole.
All right. Yeah. So my podcast helped me to be free from the darkness in several different ways. So the first way was like, I felt like I was teleported into a whole nother world because I surrounded myself with people that weren't doing great things per se. And it didn't give me any reason to want to be and do better. And then when I decided to create this podcast, I learned about so many amazing women of color entrepreneurs that were doing such amazing things. So it made me want to level up. It gave me a new network and community of people to lean on and glean from and actually aspire to be like. So it was like a night and day shift from how they say, like, you are the sum of the 5 people around you. Well, if I compare the 5 people around me prior to podcasting, it wasn't that great of a picture, right? And now after podcasting, the people that I'm surrounded by are of so much more quality. And another way that my podcast has freed me from the darkness is because earlier this year, well, when I first started podcasting, I was in active addiction, right? Alcoholic, drugs, and I was doing that as well as podcasting. And then I started to see my podcast grow and take on a life of its own. And it made me want to clean up my act so that I can step into what I created. I saw myself like going far, but I'm like, this is holding me back. So my podcast was one of the reasons why I decided to seek recovery and get some of that darkness out of my life.
And for me personally, man, coming from a single parent home, no siblings, all I really ever had was conversations in my own head. I never even had many friends growing up. And the way podcasting has freed me from the darkness, prior to getting an audience, I was just able to release all the thoughts I ever had in my mind without any judgment, without any fear of getting any blowback for my opinion. And again, like living in my head for all those years, it became very heavy. All those thoughts, like not having a proper outlet, it just became very suffocating. And the podcast, it's allowed me to just free myself and relieve myself of those thoughts and allow me to, in turn, inspire other people to do the same. It's been a very, very beneficial, empowering, almost 3-year experience, and I'm eternally grateful for podcasting. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me, honestly. My next question I'm going to present to my fellow panelists, starting with Blake, is in order to start your healing process, you had to come with terms of acceptance that you have to move forward and work on improving your mental health. Can you describe what that phase of acceptance was like, and what were some steps or outlets that you utilized to give you the confidence to move forward towards making those steps?
Yeah. So the acceptance process for me was a difficult process. It had been a number of years that I had been battling depression, anxiety, and kind of going through the roller coaster of emotions and mental anguish that comes with that. It was when I really started to battle alcoholism that I really realized that I needed to change and make a difference in myself in order for me to make a difference in the lives of anybody else. And so there was literally a moment one day where I was finishing a bottle of alcohol and I threw the bottle into my trash can. And just the sound of all the bottles of alcohol in my trash can at the time just did something to me that made me realize I have a problem. Like, I need to change and make my life better, and I need to move into a healthier place. And so from that day forward, I started seeking therapy, counseling, being open and honest and transparent with the doctors and people that I was working with in the medical field, more than I ever had. And I made it a number one priority in my life. There was nothing, and even still to this day, nothing comes before my mental health and wellness. And to get to that place, I just had to accept where I was. I had to accept the fact that I was an alcoholic. I had to accept the fact that at that time I was 130 pounds. I had to accept the fact that I was not in a good place. And once I did that, I also accepted the journey moving forward to get myself out of that, which eventually led me to start podcasting.
Amazing. Nicole, would you like to go next?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so part of my acceptance was actually admitting, like, I didn't realize how hard it was to just say, like, I'm stressed out or something doesn't feel right. Like, I remember I was on the phone with my aunt, and when I actually said, I think I'm stressed, she's like, you think? And then all of these tears just started flowing. And I'll just go back, like, I was functionally depressed for a long time. So it was my norm. Like, I didn't realize that something was wrong, although I felt miserable. But on the outside, to everyone else, like, I had a marriage, I had children, I had a house, a decent career. So to other people, it's like, oh, your life is great. But to me, it just didn't feel great. But I just thought that that was normal for a long time, for it just not to feel great, right? So to actually admit that something isn't right, that was like a total weight lifted off of me. And then from lifting that weight, it's like, okay, well, what do I do about it? So that looked like going to get therapy. Another big thing for me was actually deciding to journal. And it's so funny, like, I went back to school to get my MBA back in 2012 and graduated in 2016. And I remember my aunt saying, it's easier for you to get your MBA than it is for you to journal, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, it is, right? It was easy for me to do education, to do business, but to actually tap into my feelings and express my feelings, to give respect to the way I felt, that was really hard. And from that process, what I'm learning is that it's okay not to be okay, right? But it's not okay to ignore how you feel. Like, you have to actually acknowledge how you feel if you want to get past what's currently going on.
Perfect. Nicole, would you like to answer, please? I mean, I'm sorry, Nicole. Alexis. My apologies.
It's okay.
My apologies.
So I think I said I made a mistake. I started the podcast in 2017, but I want to start with 2014 was when I moved to a city that I really enjoyed in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was actually evicted from there. Also, I got fired. And then I moved into an apartment with a relationship that I really didn't want to do. On top of that, there was alcoholism going there. So much so that, like Blake said, when he gained the weight, I was up to like 200 pounds. And so that was my, I guess, big eye opener of all of those kind of downfalls. I had to fix something. So I started going to therapy. And in that time, what that has helped was therapy gave me the tools to get over those things, those humps. And in turn, I eventually met my husband, had another baby. And that's when I said that sparked to bring out the podcast that I finally wanted to have. So.
Wow. And even for me, it's kind of hard to like go back to this time of my life and even talk about it. It never gets easier. But for me, I would always use so many different outlets to try to find peace or substitute a form of peace for myself that I think I thought I needed, whether it be through psychedelic drugs, through relationships, through working out, through therapy. I would always utilize these things in my life to find a bit of myself and to find that form of peace I was searching for this entire time. But I would notice every new year, every couple of years, those things would just dissipate from my life for different reasons. And all that was left was me. And it really took for me to look inside myself, and honestly, journaling and writing. I wrote a few books this year, actually, in unique different ways, telling my story. I had to really look within myself to find that true peace I was searching for. All the different outlets I would utilize, they would all disappear. They would never work out. And I would always question why. It's just like, these things were so great. They made me so happy at the time that I had them, but they're not here anymore. And it was due to me and I had to look within me to find out what was happening to me, you know? And that was a very hard pill to swallow, because, you know, when you have those different outlets to bring you peace, you don't want to let them go ever. They, through different people, relationships, they're just such great outlets to you. They feel so good. And for you to lose them, it just was very, very hard to accept. I still am working through that acceptance phase even to this day, honestly. But as I'm becoming more comfortable and I'm progressing more, and I'm getting responses through podcast episodes and people are telling me I'm helping them, it kind of makes me comfort in the decisions that were made for me up to this point, and that I made for myself up to this point. And again, the acceptance phase is never easy to fully accept. So I'm still working through it, but it's definitely possible if you're going through something similar. And my next question, I would like to start with Nicole, is the being able to communicate is a very, it's a skill that it's kind of hard to develop, but I feel through podcasting it becomes a bit easier. The more episodes you do, the more guests you have on, the ability to communicate becomes a bit easier. So I'm curious if your communicative skills have improved in your personal life, in your professional life through podcasting. Have you noticed any difference? I'd like to start with Nicole.
Yes, I will definitely say that I have noticed a difference. One thing that I did in the beginning of starting podcasting was to take Toastmaster classes because I wanted to show up as my best self in my craft, right? But even with taking those classes, it made me pay attention to some of my filler words, but I noticed that one filler word, like I might have changed to like is a word that I say often. And that's something that I continue to be aware of so that I can continue to improve, right? So you're touching on a topic that's important to me, which is like personal development. It's like we have to pay attention to what we see and then decide what we want to do to fix it. And I will say, I listened back to the first episode of my podcast, which back in 2018 up until now, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I sound horrible, right? But gratefully, people listened, people liked it, and people continue to come back. So I feel like with anything, it's like a muscle, right? The more you use it, the better you get. The longer you keep going and keep practicing and trying. So I have noticed the difference.
Perfect. Blake, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Look, there's my filler word coming out right in the beginning. It's been a process. I think the thing that is added to my communication skills the most is it's made me just comfortable just talking to anybody. Although, you know, professionally I used to be a teacher, so I used to have to literally stand in front of a room of kids and people and parents and talk to different just groups of people. It was something that I did a lot in my life, but talking about things that were personal and things that were painful and things that were very difficult just to have conversations about, period, it has helped me in that process because it's given me confidence in a lot of ways, because talking about the things that I've been through has been an inspiration to other people. You know, similar to you, Jeff, I've had people reach out to me who are inspired by my podcast, who listen to it, who enjoy the ums and the breaths in my podcast. So those kind of things, you know, in the beginning I was like, I can't wait till I learn how to edit and take these things out. But ultimately, I would say the best thing that I've attained through podcasting to help my communication skills is just confidence in speaking and not being afraid to make mistakes, not being afraid to stumble over my words, not being afraid to say the wrong thing, but then go back and correct myself in a lot of ways. So it's definitely helped me. I know it's going to only get better the more that I do more episodes.
Right. Last but not least, Alexis.
So I have to agree with Nicole, where I believe that it is like a muscle. And that first episode, gosh, I know we all have that horrible first episode. It has really helped me as well. I started off as a DJ for a college radio station, which not a lot of people listen to. I was on from 10 p.m. to midnight. But I wanted to make sure that I did that first before I did my podcast. And I still used to write like long scripts with my podcast. And so at times it felt like I was reading. Now I have more confidence in myself to where I just write an outline and I can actually free flow, better than I do now. So yeah, it has definitely helped in my professional and podcasting life.
And for me, my communication skills have always been more comfortable in a professional setting, whether it's through work or through podcasting, being with friends, whatever. I've always been super comfortable speaking that way. But personally, I've always felt this discomfort when it came to speaking with my mom and my other family members. As an only child, you know, you look for different outlets than the ones you have at home to feel comfortable, friends, relationships. So my communication skills were built up over time through those outlets, but I would never really communicate with my family about personal things or things I went through, just off the fact that I always told myself that they would never fully understand. You know, the parents don't understand thing, right? But through podcasting and through this journey of self-reflection, I'm realizing that's not right. You know, like I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have this ability to communicate today without my family, you know? And so my communication skills through podcasting have helped me build the confidence and get over that awkward hump when communicating with my family. And now, truthfully, 2020 has made our relationship stronger than it ever was. You know, I feel like I know them more. I feel like I understand them more, and vice versa. So again, my communication skills were always perfect outside of home, but now within my home, it's synonymous with how I am outside of it. So it just feels good. I feel good in all aspects of my communication skills. Sorry. And I guess my next question, starting with I guess Blake. Depression and anxiety are the biggest forces that our mind creates. You know, they're not real until we acknowledge them. And when we do, we can't really escape that. So I'm curious, what are some practices or techniques that you develop for yourself in order to get over those moments, in order to keep working towards maximizing your creative potential?
It's several things that I do now. I would say I'll start with one of the things that I do is I watch my diet. I try to eat a mostly plant-based diet. Try to eat a fresh fruit smoothie every day. Try to exercise on a regular basis. That is something that has really helped me over the past couple months recently. That has helped me with my depression and anxiety. I see a therapist. Currently, I'm seeing a therapist twice a week. It's been extremely therapeutic to really go in depth and really take my therapy journey seriously. And when I decided to start when I switched from going from once a week to twice a week, is really when I realized that I have to go to therapy. I have to go multiple times a week. I have to take my mental health seriously on a whole nother level than I had ever before in my life. I also have created very strict boundaries in my life. I do not allow any sort of toxicity to continually happen in my life. Unfortunately, what that has happened, what has been a result of that is there are some family members that I don't deal with because of, you know, our past traumas, and as well as there are some friends and just people that I love deeply who have been a part of my life for a very long time. I've had to put them at a very great distance. And it's not that I am just completely eliminating them from my life, but where I am in my journey, on my healing journey, that is, they're not respecting my boundaries. And I cannot continuously put a lot of effort into enforcing these boundaries because that becomes mentally taxing as well. So just learning to protect my energy, protect myself, make myself a priority, is what I do to kind of just stay in a positive space. Yeah.
Alexis, would you like to go next?
So I have several things, but one thing is that I have to embrace change. And even as far as with the change, I'll say, for example, the election. I know politics bring out a lot of different set of emotions. And within my family, there were some people who voted for 45 and then some people who voted for Biden. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but you can understand that that brought out a lot of emotions. So we just have to embrace that. And I accept that and I embrace change, regardless of whatever I can't help, I guess, whatever I can't change, you know, I don't have control of. Second, I have to second Blake again, which is your diet and exercising. I make sure that I go to boot camp Monday through Thursday early in the morning. like at 5 a.m. I wanted to challenge myself, and that actually helps to start my day, that big challenge. And also just continue to learn different things. Podcasting is evolving, audio is evolving, a lot of things are evolving. And so you have to make sure that you are in front of that. And so that's how I actually combat that.
Nicole?
All right. And I say yes, yes, and yes to everything everyone has already said, right? Yeah, exercise has been a big thing for me. And I always tell people, like, I don't exercise because I want to lose weight, which I do, don't get me wrong. But it's for my mindset. Like, I can be in the worst mood, and from exercising, I feel so much better. It allows me to handle my day better. So, exercising at the top of the list, or one of the tops of the list. Another thing that I did is personal affirmations, right? Like, I had this, I guess, a negative view of myself. Like, I'm an overachiever. I'm the hardest person on myself ever, right? So a lot of times I wouldn't give myself the credit when I deserve the credit, right? Like, sometimes I needed to have encouraging people around me to even tell me, like, Nicole, you did great. And I'm like, really? So those encouraging people, but back to those positive affirmations, like literally telling myself, like, you are good, you deserve good, and things like that, right? So they asked us to, or they gave us the opportunity to offer something to the audience, which I gave a PDF on called Speak Life, a guide to positive affirmations. So if you want to check that out, please do, because sometimes we do need to reprogram our brain, right? If you're used to negativity and thinking negatively, then that's what your brain goes through first, right? And not to get, I won't get too scientific, but it's like actually like the neurons in our brain that once we go to this negative place, like that's what automatically happens. So you have to exercise your brain and teach your brain to then do something positive, as opposed to the negativity that you've been used to doing. So it's all about work, and actually, I think they're called reprogramming the transmitters. So positive affirmations are a great way to do that. Another thing that keeps me level is prayer. Prayer is a big part of my life, and it helps me to get through things that may seem impossible. Listening to uplifting music, right? When things are just not going the way I'm going, the uplifting music I like to listen to is gospel music, to each his own, but finding music that lights you up, and so that you can change your mood and shift your mood. Music is very powerful in doing that. And again, I talked about uplifting people. Like, really, it's so important, the people that you surround yourself with. Like, if you have people that walk around with a rain cloud, and then that's all that you're talking to every day, you're going to have a rain cloud too, right? But if you talk to people that walk around with sunshine, then it'll help to bring more sunshine in your life. So people are very important. And I think that goes to what Blake said, as far as your energy and protecting that and choosing wisely. And then I'll say rest, like knowing that it's okay to rest, like take a break. If you're not feeling okay, acknowledge that. And sometimes I just have to watch TV. I'm like, you know what? I just need to sit down, lay down, and watch TV, and just allow myself to be in this moment and not try to fight it, because sometimes fighting it can be opposing, but then allowing myself to be, so that it can pass, and then I can take on the day, the week, the month, what have you.
Perfect. I second, third, and fourth everything you guys said. I'm not sure if anyone else could relate to this, but during the lockdown back in March, I feel like all of our routines were kind of taken away from us. So we had to add new things to adjust to this new lifestyle. So for me, I've been journaling a lot. I call this the manifestation manual. So I've been learning to be more specific with everything I want out of life. I don't really say I want, or I need, or I wish I had this anymore. I usually just write once a day something that I already have, that I just know my physical body is catching up to. So I do that once a day. And the one big thing that I really adopted this year that I never had up to this point was selfishness. I've been more selfish with where I distribute my energy, like Blake and Nicole said. I really am very more protective of my energy than I ever have been. So I still have friends that still like to go out and do things like things are normal with COVID going on, right? And they hit me up all the time, and I'm just like, no, I'm not doing that. I want to be safe. I want my family to be safe if I end up around them after I end up hanging out with you. So I really adopted a real selfish energy as opposed to my normal selfless energy that I had. And that's kind of been the biggest benefit from my entire life, journaling and being selfish. It just feels good to be in control of where you decide to put your energy and invest it. I have lost some people who were in my life prior to this because of that, but I feel more comfortable with that result because I'm doing what's best for me. And prior to that, I would always indulge in my selfless side and do what I felt like other people needed me to do, or I feel like if I could help them, it would make me feel good. But I've really been focusing on myself more so than ever before, and I feel free. I feel lighter. I feel happier. I feel more comfortable being me. And I think everyone at home, I think you should kind of adopt a healthy form of selfishness, because when we hear that word, our mind probably immediately goes to someone like 45, like an asshole. But I think you should really adopt a healthy form of selfishness in order to progress further in life, because it's nothing but a benefit for you. And my next question is, I'd like to start with maybe Alexis. You guys have mentioned that you've had some troubles in the past, and I feel like the past is the biggest anchor that's holding us down when we're trying to propel towards our future. I'm curious, how have you guys managed to work through your past dealings, your past situations, and how have you managed to continue moving towards the future, knowing what you've been through? Are there any new techniques or outside of or practices or just a new mindset you've developed in order to work through that? And if so, how? Starting with Alexis.
Okay. So with the past, I mean, of course, well, I'm sure a lot of us have had like our set of trauma, however small or big it may have been. And how I use it is, if I'm not going to do it, then who else is going to do it? And then I have a big thing of, I want to prove my doubters wrong. Like for example, I was a statistic, excuse me. At 19, I was in college. I got pregnant, had my first child, and everyone around me, even my family members, were like, oh, she's not going to graduate from college. She's going to be not successful and everything. And I have proved them wrong. And to this day, that is my motivator. Oh, I'm going to prove you wrong. And there's no exception to that. So that's how I use that to, it's just only that one thing, just to prove them wrong, my doubters.
Nicole, would you like to go next?
Okay. Yeah. So a practice that I have and recently is gratitude, right? Like really practicing gratitude. And that allows me to stay on an even keel. I learned recently that it takes like 3 things to be grateful for to cancel out one negative experience or occurrence, right? So it's so interesting to me how negativity has so much more weight than positivity. So really finding things to be grateful for, even if the day isn't going the way that I want it to go, right? There's always something that I can find to be grateful for. And I make it my business to do that, because that allows me to have a better mindset, right? Learning to look at failure as a learning lesson as opposed to a loss, right? You only fail when you quit, not when things don't go your way. So finding new ways to get to goals is something else that I do. And then really just like approaching things from light as opposed to from dark. And those are some of my ways.
Okay. Blake?
This question is so interesting because it actually takes me back to game night yesterday. And I realized that, and it's a reoccurring thing that constantly comes up in therapy with my therapist. I have to forgive myself for the things that I've done to myself, the things that I've been through, and I have to engage with the art of just letting things go. And by doing that, it's not like discrediting that these things happen or that they're not serious or severe, but it's also just creating more space for new things, new beginnings for my future to unfold. Because by holding on to the weight of the past and the things that I've been through in my trauma for a lot of years of my life, it led me to depression and battling anxiety. So once I began to release, let things go, and forgive myself, forgive others, whether that actually required an actual apology or just not even engaging or just, whatever it was, just learning to accept what I had been through and let it go. It's helped me to just continue to move forward, and it's opened up new doors, new opportunities, and created new clarity for me as well.
Yeah, same here, actually. I had to really forgive myself. I used to beat myself up all the time for the things and the way I've acted for other people. I felt really guilty. I felt horrible to be me. I felt like this is the worst version of myself. But I had to recognize that who I was back then is not who I am today. So once I kind of came to that realization and accepted that part of my journey and realized that everything I had done and everything I had been through up to that point was overall meant for me to get to this space, then I just realized it was all worth it. And I feel more at peace with who I am and what I've been through. And I don't have any regrets. I mean, of course I wish I could have done something different, but I'm at peace. I have just one quick question before we get into the Q&A. This is something I've been talking about on my podcast and been asking on my podcast a lot. I want to start with Blake, then go to Nicole, then Alexis, then we get into the Q&A. Being successful versus being accomplished. I feel we kind of put like a red flag, like an end goal on like being successful. Like we feel like that's like what we're all working towards, and we kind of diminish what we've accomplished up to that point, and it kind of even may build a discomfort within. So I'm just curious, everyone, do you feel accomplished or successful at this point in your life? And if you choose accomplished, do you feel, does the fact that you're not where you want to be depress you in any way? And how do you work past that? I would like to start with Blake.
Do I feel accomplished or successful? I would say yes and no. I'll say yes, I feel successful. The reason I feel successful is because I've learned to celebrate myself and celebrate the things that I've overcome, the things that I've been through. Success is now truly for myself defined from within. And so each day that I wake up and I have life, I feel like I'm successful. Each day that I go through the day and I do the things that are a part of my self-care routine, like eating a healthy meal, drinking a smoothie, working out, going to the gym, doing my podcast, doing something creative. That to me resonates with being successful. Now, when it comes to being accomplished, I kind of relate that to like material things and things that like I can actually have and attain. No, I'm not where I want to be in life right now. My life is, I won't say it's in shambles, but I'm finally coming out of a very dark place that I once was in. It's been a year for me podcasting, and it's been 2 years since I quit my job as a teacher. And have I accomplished the things in life that I want to have? No, but I do believe that I've been successful. I've achieved greatness. I'm a completely different person than I was a year ago or 2 years ago. And so I know that through everything that I'm doing, through my newfound clarity of my mindset and understanding myself and my mental health, understanding that my health is my wealth, I know that I will eventually start to accomplish the things in life that I desire to have.
Perfect. Nicole?
All right. So you've hit a tough question for me, right? This is a struggle area for me because I am an overachiever and I create all of these large goals for myself. But I will say I feel both. I feel successful as well as accomplished, right? Because I'm learning to celebrate the small wins along the way. I heard someone talk before and they're like if you focus on the end goal, then you miss the joy of the journey. So I'm trying to teach myself not to overlook the joy of the journey and to celebrate all the small wins. One thing I heard that helped me was like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? Whereby you're focused on this big elephant as opposed to each bite. And then the importance of celebrating each bite. And as I'm saying this, I'm talking to myself as well, because again, this is an area that I have to keep reminding myself of. It's like, okay, you plan on being all the way there and you're not there yet, but that doesn't mean that where you are doesn't have value and doesn't hold weight and doesn't deserve to be recognized and celebrated. So that's what I have to continue to tell myself every day, especially because I'm surrounded by so many great people that are doing great things. Like social media can be a gift and a curse because it can make you look at other people's lives and feel like you're not doing enough, right? But then I look at that as a blessing to be around so many people, and it inspires me to keep going, right? So celebrate the small wins and keep moving toward the larger ones, knowing that you are successful and accomplished. Getting out the bed is a success.
Alexis?
Well, I don't know if I can top those, but but I think that I feel successful more than accomplished. I know that there are a lot of other goals, material included, I have to be honest, but that's not saying that I'm not grateful for where I am. I honestly have manifested the things that are happening to me right now, and I've actually worked to those goals. So that's why in defining success, I feel successful in that. But accomplished, I do not right now, because I have so much further to go. So as Blake and Nicole said, I just have to concur with them.
For me, I'll do this really quick so we can get to the Q&A. I feel successful, honestly. I know where I come from. I know where I've been, and I knew who I was, where I wasn't doing anything at all. And I know where I'm headed. I know everything I want is going to be mine eventually. I just have to keep going. So knowing all that and realizing that and recognizing that, I feel successful. I've heard one too many times in my podcast has helped somebody. That's an accomplishment for me. That's a stat. That's something I never thought I would ever hear in my entire life. Just knowing who I am and who I've been. So having those little moments like that make me feel accomplished, and knowing that everything I'm working towards I have already, or my physical body is just catching up to that reality, I'm successful. So we can get to the Q&A now. I'm ready to hear people's thoughts and questions.
I'm actually looking at it on my phone here.
Oh, you got it on your phone?
Yeah. So I believe, so I'll go ahead and read the question. So I believe this is from Scorpion. It says, were you apprehensive about being so transparent about your mental health? If so, what got you past or over that fear? That's a really good question.
It's a great one.
I'll go ahead and start it off, and then just pass it off to you, Jeff, and then Alexis and Nicole. So at first, absolutely, I was very hesitant and apprehensive about sharing with the things that I had been through. Yet when I started my podcast, Diary of a Mad Black Man, I was in such a dark place. Like, I had literally, like, 3 weeks prior, I was in the hospital and almost died. And like a week before that, I was suicidal and wanted to kill myself. So when I started to share my story, there was like no fear of what other people could do or what anybody could say or how anybody could react, because I knew how I felt about myself at one point. I knew where I was mentally and how I was feeling deep inside. So in a sense, that helped to make the process a little bit easier. And even still now, there are certain topics that I want to share, but I am a slightly apprehensive about, simply because it involves other people. Yet, similar to you, Jeff, the fact that people reach out to me and they say my podcast inspires them, the fact that I've had other Black men reach out to me and tell me that they're now going to therapy because of how honest and transparent I was about me going to therapy and the things that I've been through, it's getting much easier, and I'm going to become more transparent, more vulnerable on my podcast, especially moving into season 4. And it's been a journey. It's been one journey, but in the beginning it was a little rough. But again, because of my own mental health challenges and my own like self destructive behaviors that I had, it was like, I mean, I know how I felt about myself. So there's really nothing that anybody else could do to me that I haven't already thought of doing myself anyway. So yeah, I'll pass it off to I guess Jeff, if you want to take it over.
Okay. Yeah, I was extremely fearful. Even I'm still fearful of speaking about everything I've been through, just because I feel like I would like to think, maybe this is naive of me to think, but the average person will empathize, and they have that empathetic bone within them. So they'll empathize with what I'm going through or what I've experienced, but they'll never fully understand because they never lived it the way I did. They may have had similar pathways and similar experiences, but they'll never fully understand it the way I understand it. So I've always been very fearful of opening up, just due to that lack of understanding and that potential judgment from that lack of understanding. So it took me a while to like open up on my podcast. And so honestly, one episode, I literally had a breakdown and cried behind like live on the episode, and I just had to get it out. And that was like part of like part of like the trajectory of my confidence and revealing more and more about myself after the reception from that moment. So yeah, I'm still scared to this day, but I just know it's the best way to find peace.
I would absolutely have to say the first episode, I was very apprehensive, but there is something about, I'm not sure if you all have a studio, but I still actually film in my closet because it has, you know, the clothes and stuff. It's great for the sound quality. And so it's something about being on the mic and you being by yourself and expressing your thoughts with whatever podcast episode it is. And sometimes I'm still apprehensive as well. My last podcast episode was my most vulnerable, and I've gotten a great response over that. And what that's just telling me is that I need to be more vulnerable as well. So I am still slightly apprehensive now, but I will get over that soon.
All right, now jump in quickly. Ironically, for me, it's not as difficult. I've always been a person who talked a lot about what I had going on, so I didn't mind sharing my stories, certain stories, though, when I did come out about being having a problem with alcohol and drugs, that felt a little funny. But one thing that has helped me to share my story openly is that I believe that we all go through to help others get through. And once I accepted, like, everything that I've experienced, everything that's occurred in my life is to help someone else along the way, it made it easier for me to be more open about my story. And I actually, like, I celebrated the 100th episode of my podcast, and I decided to be interviewed as opposed to interviewing other people. And I titled it From Darkness to Light, right? So it's so funny that this panel is called Freedom from Darkness. I'm like, oh, I'm perfect for this, right? And that's when I really went into a lot of some of the things that have held me back, and just shared it and be okay with that, right? And if someone judges, then shame on them.
Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, we have we got a couple minutes left. I guess there's actually a few more questions here. But I'll just, for the sake of time, I'm just going to read the last question that's in the chat. And it says, when sharing and having guests, how do you remove yourself from inserting yourself when something is so similar? How do you remove yourself from inserting yourself when something is so similar?
I feel if you're taking that role of an interviewer, that's kind of what you have to do to make the interview more digestible. You kind of have to separate yourself to go deeper into that conversation and make the guest more comfortable, and just remove yourself from that moment. You can empathize, you can drop little gems and reference to what you've been through and relate it. But I think a true interviewer will leave themselves out of it. So that's just how I feel. I'm not sure if anybody else has anything.
Yeah, I'll actually, this is PJ. What's up, PJ? I'm gonna get from last night. He added some to meaning how to not make it about you. So what I like to do is when I have people on my platform, I usually have a conversation with them before we record the actual podcast, just to kind of create a sense of synergy. And then when I'm interviewing them, similar to like what Jeff said, I make it all about them. I want to, and I also go in it with the idea that I want to learn something from this experience. I want to learn something that's going to add to my life by having them on my podcast and by engaging in a conversation with them about the various topics that I've talked about on my podcast. So that's how I do it. Alexis or Nicole, I don't know if you all want to, I don't know how much time we have left. You all want to chime in?
Well, I do it similar to you. I have a conversation with the guests and I make sure that it's about them. But as an interviewer, we have to make sure that it's our job to listen. And as well as when we listen to those podcast episodes, like we can just pick up on like not interrupting, things like that. So it's fairly easy to make it not about yourself as the host of that podcast. It's pretty much you have to listen. So.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing I like to do with my podcast is to show that we all are more similar than we realize, right? So I do like to piggyback and show like, oh, wow, I can relate to that. And I don't think it's anything wrong with doing that.
I think we just made the time.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for attending. This has been a wonderful panel, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great.
That was awesome.
Yeah, this was pretty dope. Thank you, guys.
That was great.
Oh, wait, so it was like, that's it?
Hey,
So is everyone
keep
out the
going.
room except us, or are they still leaving?
I'm
We're still
ready to end the meeting for all. So,
Okay.
and